Hello devs, today I'm going to do a little bit different topic on React. So I've just checked on some of the things you may need for this 2023, and if you're just a beginner, then this might be the right one for you. If you already know your track, then you may just follow along. You might find one or two things to pick on the way. The secret recipe to master React. Okay, so generally I've done React for like one and a half years, and the coding has been great, and I've also learned a lot on the way. So I picked out some of the specific details that I feel as a React developer you need to know for you to be a master of React. Other people who lay out roadmaps, I know there are a lot of frameworks and there are a lot of libraries that work the same as React. Of course, we have things like Angular, Vue, other server-side rendered like Svelte and Next. All of them are there, but the core principles of JavaScript hold for both. So once you know the basics for JavaScript, then none of this will be hard for you. So here's my plan. So key areas that you need to be good at when now you're starting on JavaScript, like you want to build front-end applications, or not even front-end applications, considering even you are going to handle backend using JavaScript. So number one thing, you need to understand JavaScript basics. So what do I mean by basics? You need to understand what are variables, the types that are available there. We need to know data structures within the JavaScript ecosystem, functions in a list, we have arrays, we have objects. How do we manipulate these data types? Okay, so those should be covered in the JavaScript basics. You know, control flows, loops, and many others. So I'm not going to talk about the JavaScript basic stuff, but you get the idea of learning the basics before you dive into any given framework, because all these basics are tied into the framework, and it's just an abstraction of what you could have taken time to build on. So master JavaScript basics first. That's my number one principle. So number two, once you've mastered the basics, modules, you'll work with modules. So there are ES5, ES3, ES5, we have ES6, ES 2017, ES 2016, ES 2020, ES 2022. So the ES ecosystem has been evolving, and the ES6 was the major release and one of the greatest changes in the JavaScript, how JavaScript was being written. So you need to understand how modules works, because if you're going to build something to deal with the React or something like Vue or Angular, you'll be using ES6 module of module. So that's why you involve imports rather than they require. So once you understand modules, of which modules are just a small sections of your code given a specific tasks, but can also be isolated into a different file, and you can get access to them via import. So the way you import them, we have named imports, default exports, and named exports. Then how do we import these ones into the system? So under modules, React itself is a module you have to install, then you also work with it. So that's the essence of working with modules. You can also build your own libraries that other people are able to use. So the key thing here is to understand ES6 and understand it well. React has you can use functional components or class-based components, but all these are in the ES6 ecosystem. So you need to understand how let works, how uh, classes work, how year 6 modules work, how arrays are different in year 6, arrow functions. So most of the time you'll just be using arrow functions because most people prefer them. They are very short and precise, writing anonymous functions. So when you understand year 6 very well, you'll be at upper hand of getting React to work easier for you. So under year 6 we have this kind of principles. We have destructuring and spread operators. So you need to understand maybe how you retrieve information from an array. Like you can destructure data from a given object or a given array. So how do you do the destructuring? So those are some of the things that you need to understand because you'll be using them most of the time. We can also square some time to do a bit of the practice on how this spread and destructuring works. Arrow functions, as I had said, and they're stateless in the sense that they don't have context. So sometimes you just need to use arrow functions with caution because they may lead to some irregularities in how your code behaves. So sometimes you just need to use the normal JavaScript function. So another thing on top of it is JSX. So JavaScript, so this is enhanced JavaScript that you can use markup within the same JavaScript, but it's being transpiled using something like Babel for the DOM to be able to understand how JavaScript marries itself with the markup and building React components. So you also need to understand the basics of JSX. So from here, we also need to understand how objects and arrays work, because when you'll be handling things to deal with the APIs and something like APIs or building custom objects, you'll work a lot with objects, you'll work a lot with arrays, and from the array point we also need to understand there are some concepts known as high order functions. These are some of the functions that you'll be using to like manipulate your array, sort them, map, filter, reduce. Maybe if you are in the context of building a shopping cart, you can reduce the your cart quantity and your cart full value, like computing the total cost of all the products maybe of shortlisted in your shopping cart. So once you're just good with these ones are just based on pure JavaScript, okay? And now if we come to React stuff, then we'll need to understand some concepts here like the virtual DOM. So we need to know how JavaScript, the React handles the JavaScript DOM, and what is a virtual DOM. So React uses a virtual DOM. So what's a virtual DOM? So virtual DOM is just a replica of your DOM that React keeps track of and updates. So it updates the virtual DOM, which updates the actual DOM. So it keeps track of all the elements and their positions and their state, that to mean the data that they are containing within React, so that when you make a change, only a given specific element is changed within the DOM, as opposed to the other way. Let's say we are using something like jQuery or the native JavaScript to handle the DOM. So this from HTML CSS knowledge. So when you are working with these elements, you'll usually have to create so many variables to be able to track each and every element that maybe you're going to manipulate programmatically with JavaScript. So it's really tedious, and React gets to handle this for you. So with you just have to focus on the business logic. JSX, as I have just said in the previous slide, and so what makes React powerful? That's the next concept, that's known as components. So what are components? So components are small bits of your application that make up the complete application. So let's say you have a house, and this house, or no, let me just take a scenario of a human being. So being human, we are made up of small components. We have fingers, we have the complete hand, we have joints, we have head, we have the neck, we have the our limbs, that's the legs, thighs, and other parts of our body. So all these individual parts of our body are known as components, but they're brought together as one, so that makes us complete. So if we take the scenario of building an application, you'll have an app. So let's say, for instance, YouTube. So if you go to something like YouTube, you'll see we have a variety of items here, and just what you see on top here, we have this side, we have the sidebar, we have this section here that is scrollable, we have this search, and these, they're so-called cards. So these cards that are almost the same, but they have different data. So these are small components that we can reuse. So if you're able to split your application in the sense that you make it into small bits, it becomes really easy to write your application. So you don't have to repeat yourself many times, just have to build one component and reuse it where necessary. So once you understand components, then now that will take you to something known as props and state. So there's this concept of parent-child relationship, because we know that if a parent instills something to the child, so when you instill something in a child, that means the properties you give to a child, the child maybe cannot change them. So what are props and what is state? So state is the condition that a given component holds, and it has some value, so that value can be changed within that given component. But props is a leeway by which you can inject or pass a given state to another component, which just may need that component. That component may just need to maybe do the render. So back to YouTube, if you check on this, we have the all of this part. So these are children, so we can say the whole of YouTube. Then we have these children cards, so we are looping through those the data we have to be able to render those children. But what we have here, we have this picture, we have this title, and we have a little maybe time lapse. So by this we are passing some given properties. Okay, if you're working with the regular functions, we'll have something to deal with. You create a placeholder for how do we say it, a function parameters. So function parameters will be your props. Okay, and what you'll be passing will be value to those props. So those props are just a gateway through which you can be able to pass data to a given component. So one major difference between props and state is that state can be modified within the component, but props are read-only, so you cannot change props. You can only change props from the state where they are gotten from. So I think I'll show you how props and state differ. And once you get to understand that, then now we'll now start handling things to deal with events. So we have the DOM events. If you click an item, what should I do? If you scroll on something, what should I do? If you drag something, what should I do? You should learn how React handles this, and not necessarily React, even the framework maybe, or another library that you're using. So these are global features of the DOM that we expect to be able to be managed by these given libraries. So once you understand how to interact with DOM events and how React handles them, then we should now move to something known as lists and arrays. So don't have much of the concept of lists in JavaScript, but we have arrays. So how do you work with arrays in JavaScript? Because I know in Vue we use something known as for of loop. I think it's for in loop. And in React we use map, and in Angular I guess we use for of loop. So in these concepts, they'll only be doing a little bit of tweak on how you are supposed to do these things. So once you know how to handle arrays, then now we'll go to something known as conditional render. So these are now you apply conditions to show a given part of the DOM, whether it's necessary, check given conditions. If they are met, then do some other things. Maybe if password is not met, how do you render something, maybe an error element on the DOM. Once you understand those ones, then now we can now start checking on the form. So form is just a way through which you can get user input into our DOM. So by this we are able to pick data, send them to the database, get validated, then maybe create your account. It doesn't matter how you learn all this stuff, but provided you learn them, because they are the building blocks of how you are going to master React. So once you've understood the concept of forms, then now you can go back again to something known as state. So the state, which I've outlined here to be advanced, just means if your app now starts growing, it becomes big, then you should now start considering other ways of handling state of your application. That to mean props is our first-hand way of rendering or passing down data to given component. So if these components are nested down in deep, then we lead to something known as prop drilling. So that's now where we can factor in state management tools such as Context API or even React Redux. So you can check on that. So if you've worked with React functional components, we use more of the hooks, and React functional components are stateless, so mostly we use these hooks to manage our state, as opposed to class-based components where we handle states within the component itself. So another thing I've not outlined here, if it's just good to know how React works under the hood. We have life cycle methods, or the life cycle of a given component in the DOM. So you have some methods, maybe component did mount, component did update, or component will unmount, something of that kind. So it's good you also try to learn those kind of knowledge, so that you are versed, you know how React is built internally and how you're supposed to interact with these APIs to make your app work the way it's expected to work. So once you understand all these concepts, what next? So one major thing of being a React developer is being able to create solutions, not more of I know these things, then let's just stay there. So you should build by while learning. So if you are doing something to deal with states and props, just build some given application to foster that knowledge that you have. So build apps. Most of the YouTube channels give you ways of building applications. There's social media clones and other apps. So all these concepts, please try to build React apps, as many as you can, because this is what will guarantee your experience, rather than just learning the concepts and sticking with them and staying there with them doing nothing. Just build apps. After building, you'll also start learning new things, maybe some things I did not outline here. You'll get to learn of them, and by learning them, you'll be increasing your knowledge on the stuff you're learning. And personally, I'll be happy to hear success stories of someone who maybe took these concepts and applied them to build their career. There are these emerging technologies such as TRPC. So personally, I haven't interacted with the TRPC yet, but it's something hot cake. We use something known as T3 Stack, so you can also check on that. Then start learning on the things to deal with Redux, context. Do a deep dive into them. Manage state, build something like an e-commerce, build shopping carts, login systems. By that, you'll be learning how to manage the app state, mutations of the DOM, and how to handle them, how React handles such kind of changes. Yeah, and it will be a great thing to learn. So from there, now you can now start maybe doing API calls. Build your apps based on APIs. So go to a weather API, fetch data, come display in the React application. And when you're building APIs, then you'll now learn a new technology such as Fetch API, Axios, React Query, and some others that maybe I've not mentioned here. So once you understand all these concepts, if someone was to ask me how should I just start learning Next.js or should I learn React first, I would say please learn these first concepts. Afterwards, you can now move to Next, being that now you have the knowledge of how React works under the hood, how JavaScript works. Now bringing all these concepts together will help you in building apps easily using Next, because Next is an improvement and a framework on top of React. So most of the things are optimal, but before maybe you dive into Next, suffer a bit, try to maybe do code splitting, try to maybe do routing, because if you move to something like Next, they handle the routing for you. But it's a good experience to be able to handle those things by yourself, so that if maybe a framework is not making or working the way you want it to work, then now you have a solution to be able to do the tweaks your way. So by this, tools do not dictate how you're supposed to do things, rather they should just facilitate how you build your stuff. So as you know, Next.js is a full stack React framework, and it's really good. And once you learn these concepts, it's a nice way to confirm your knowledge. So final remarks: if you're willing to take the next leap, Vue/Angular are almost like React. If you know, try learning them. Just they just look the same, so concepts are more or less the same. And maybe picking these concepts now, going to look for them in the next framework you're going to learn, it will be very easy to learn once you understand the concepts. Of course, you will just be learning, how do I pass maybe my a given state to a child component from a parent? How do I handle form events? How do I handle form submission? So something of that kind. It will be very, very easy. So I know there are so many frameworks, but just stick to one. After sticking to one, then learn it well. After learning it well, then now move to others at will, because maybe at work things do change. So just be flexible and always try ask questions on from people who you feel know, and by that you'll be really doing great justice to yourself. Thank you. So I think from there we can be able to do a bit. I think I should just stop there, so that the other parts I'll handle in the next video. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel so that I continue giving such kind of content. So your like, your subscription really helps me and the YouTube algorithm, so that many people can get this kind of content. Thank you and bye bye.